Hey, how's it going? Just working on the channel a little bit, customizing it. What's going on? I didn't know that I didn't think anybody would show up this late, but that's hey, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. This channel is going to be pretty interesting. Um because we're going to start doing like a wrap-up show, meaning like after like the big show, I say the big show, whatever that is, like our Sunday show, we'll do a wrap up show and it'll be like me, Peyton, um, and probably Lucas, and it'll just kind of, yeah, it'll just kind of be a little, yep. And then um, and then on top of that, we will start pumping out clips. I mean, we were supposed to be pretty active on this channel, and it just kind of sat and sat, and so the let's see, can't sleep. Look at that. We got 5 whole people in here. This is amazing. Uh, hello. Make it make sense. I just read your comment about we don't even know what I think that was you that said we don't even know why the boys were taken. Yeah, yeah, it's going to be a little wrap-up show. It'll be interesting. It'll be fun. I think. I don't know. Yes. Yeah, it was like this will be for like I want to say the channel, but more so like the wrap up show um is obviously going to be for like the hardcore lab rats, and we could probably drop links and where people can come come up on StreamYard instead of calling in because it'll probably be a much more narrow group. This is just kind of me thinking out loud, which I always enjoy. Um, yeah, I mean, 5 people is like that's a whole audience to me. It's funny because I used to have this saying. It was well, it wasn't really a saying. I would just say it to myself, but I would say I'm gonna do. I would do the same show. I would do the same show if one person was watching as if 10,000 people were watching. And I've done that, and I've done both actually. I have done I have streamed with one person watching, and I have been a part of a stream that had 10,000 people watching. I think you guys, yeah, I mean, we only have like a few hundred subs on this channel because it's been neglected by Peyton, you know, by Lightsaber. Yeah, and he'll get his chance to defend himself, especially on this show, on this channel. This will be his channel to defend. I'm sure he'll love it too. Mississippi girl, how are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. Tonight show was kind of interesting. I really didn't expect to have Don B call in, and Don B seems like a this that's the first time I've ever talked to Don B ever in my life. Never have I ever spoken to Don B, but I have noticed him in the chat a little bit, and that's cool. Like, I don't know the guy. I see some of the stuff that he does, and some I agree with, some I don't. And I noticed there were some people that weren't really picking up what he was saying today, and I agree. I wasn't I understood what he was trying to say. Um, yeah, he did call in for sure. Yeah, he did. He could very he yeah. I mean, I understood what he was saying, and I appreciate his input, but I didn't necessarily agree with it at all. Not that it was like some cockamamie, like asinine thing. I don't believe that was the case at all. I think that what he was saying made sense to him, and I could see how somebody would think that. But, if they to me, if they had the evidence, I mean, they would go full bore with the prosecution. I just don't think that they have the evidence. I think that they were banking on finding Summer, and they never did, and they never have. Yeah, I am somewhat I was somewhat perplexed, I guess you could say, um, by his explanation of why he thinks that the case is going to blow open. I think that was the term that he used, but I don't know. I don't know. I've had a lot of hope, and I still have hope, but my hope is less enthusiastic, um, because I have seen nothing, and I don't really understand why people like, I get why people sympathize with Don and Candace, I guess, but I've just grown to know too much about them to have any kind of sympathy. I've had too many interactions with Don. I've heard too many things and I've seen enough to form the opinion that somebody's hiding something. I've always thought that. But I didn't start out that way. I didn't start out thinking that. I think I've told this story before, but the reason that I got into true crime, and it's not even true crime to me, but people use that flippant term, and I don't understand. I get it, like true crime. It's just a weird name for a genre. Like, I'm into true crime. Uh, I guess. I guess true crime is a genre, but uh, I do question why a lot of people get into it, and most of it. And to be honest with you, the reason most people do is because they they it's profitable if you are looking to make it profitable. You can sensationalize, uh, pull on people's heartstrings. so on and so forth. And I see right through it, and I know who does it. And I think that there are people that I guess care, but sometimes the clicks and the views kind of get in the way of caring, um, because money's the root of all evil. And while I have no problem with anybody making any sort of a living, I don't necessarily think that by sensationalizing and glorifying and um, so on and so forth, I'm not really, it's strange. It's not strange. Like I said, I know why people do it. I know why true crime has become so popular. It's because that that people like to hear like harebrained ideas. Harebrained, is that a term? There's a lot of conspiracy theorists in the world. A lot of conspiracy theorists. And when you are if you're not dense, which some people obviously are, but if you're not dense, you know that situations most of these situations aren't a conspiracy. It's not some deep, like, running systematic conspiracy. And, I get asked a lot too. Say, Josh, you should have a Amazon wish list, or you should have a PO box. And I don't want it. I don't want any of that. I appreciate it, and I think that it's sweet and nice and thoughtful, and I understand. But I'm 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 not really. How would I even put this? Like, I don't want to fleece the audience. I think that's weird. I think that's really weird to do, especially. And I get like why people sell merch and monetize their channel and things like that. I mean, it does help with the time and um, you know, people say, "Oh, it helps the upkeep of this channel." Well, you don't really. I mean, other than equipment and things like that. I mean, what do you need? Um, so it is interesting, but I think that most people that do true crime are frauds and have don't actually have a heart for it, but they have an appetite for it because it's profitable and it's popular and it's kind of the latest and greatest fad. Not that true crime hasn't always been, but when like the OJ thing was going down, Casey Anthony, I don't think that there was a true crime genre. I don't think that there was a true crime genre, but I know, people are always into like high profile stuff. And, but the fact of the matter is like, you know, the Idaho 4, as horrible as that is, and it is a horrible crime. Um, f- families are annihilated every day. You know, there's always something on the news. Family of five, this, and husband does this, and you know. So basically, I'll tell you who dictates true crime would be like TMZ and 48 hours, so on and so forth. There's a lot of that. Um, they kind of dictate what is popular, and you know you're not in it for the money. That's why I choose. I really do appreciate it. Here's the thing. Like, I'm not against making money at all, and putting, if you're but if you're doing it the right way, meaning, like I said this the other day, like I see people go, oh, the you can't say suicide, or you can't say this, or you can't say that, and because you'll get demonetized, not because it's a trigger for people, not because it's um a buzzword, which it is. The fact of the matter is people are very aware of what suicide is. But this whole theme of unaliving is juvenile, and it's weird. And I would never compromise the integrity and structure of a show. And maybe this makes me dumb too, but I would never compromise the integrity or structure of a show by censoring words that are a must to use when it comes to this genre of the internet. That's why, um, and people are so careful about it. I mean, they got it down to a T. And I'll tell you what, I've never had that be the reason that I wasn't able to put, you know, have ad revenue from the show. And even if it was, it would, I would not, I would rather not do it than have to do it that way, because the things that we talk about are not pleasant. And a lot of people say, there's a lot of, I say there's a lot, I don't know, you know, a handful, and I've heard this several times, is that people say, well, you goof around too much on your show. Like, the subject matter is doesn't lend itself to humor. And I disagree. I think it's one of the ways that we cope. I think it's one of the ways that we make ourselves cope with what's going on. I know that it's been a defense mechanism of mine for a long time, is to make light and You get tired of crying. I mean, can always. I remember when my grandfather who raised me, he when he passed away, um, I was like 25, and he was, for all intents and purposes, he was my father, who raised me for, I don't know, it was like 20 something. I mean, it was over 20 years. And when he passed away, it was tough. And he had Parkinson's and dementia. And when his family came into town, he had older kids, obviously, which I considered, my uncles and aunts, even though they weren't. Um, and for that matter, my grandpa he wasn't even my blood relative, because he married my grandma before I was born, but he's the one that raised me and my sister along with my grandma. And it was I remember, him getting really sick, so on and so forth. And eventually, obviously, he passed away from Parkinson's and dementia. But and I remember the house just filling up with people as soon as the word got out that my grandpa had died. And it was like people were just coming through the doors with like trays of food. And um, it was kind of surreal the way that it happened, because your family doesn't really get together much until somebody dies. And then there's an ice chest in the living room full of beverages and finger foods and everything, as far as the eye can see. And that night, you're just kind of, after that happens, and the funeral within 2 or 3 days, so your house is just full. And that sucks. But I remember the day that we buried him. I came back to the house, and every I was obviously upset, and not, I wasn't like a basket case, but I didn't want to talk. Um, I didn't want to, I didn't want to talk about it, but I didn't really. I was bummed out. I was sad, and I wasn't the only one. But I remember my uncle Terry, very very well put together man, knows, you know been through it, and just done really well in life, and has a pretty good general grasp on the world, and um, very wise. And of he came up with this brilliant idea of, going bowling, the night of my grandfather's funeral, his dad. And everybody started talking about going bowling, and it was kind of spreading through the house like wildfire. We're going bowling. We're going bowling. Hey, you guys want to go bowling? Yeah, yeah, I want to go bowling. I'm sitting there going, I'm not going bowling. Why would I go? I'm not going bowling. He said, why not? I said, because I don't want to. I'm not in the mood. He says, "Oh, okay." But then he says, "Grab your jacket." So I don't think you heard me. I'm not going. And he goes, "Well, hear me on this. You can be sad at the bowling alley, or you can come and have fun and then be sad tomorrow." He said, "The sadness isn't going anywhere, but you're going to the bowling alley. And you can bring it with you or you can leave it. And if you don't have the choice, just come as you are." I had a blast. I had a blast. I remember that night. It was about 12 years ago. So much fun. And that was a lesson learned, and I refer to that a lot. Nothing is permanent. Nothing. Everything expires. Everything comes to an end. Things change. People go away. People die. People are born, and it's just kind of the circle of life. And people don't understand when they do these kinds of shows or talk about this kind of stuff. The problem isn't the sensitivity, which is typically dull and misrepresented and not thought out, but that is more of just a personal that's more of a personal problem. It's more of a self-awareness issue. But one thing that I don't know that people who haven't been through something life and death like or any kind of fear, whatever. Um, Life in itself is not just the only thing that matters. Part of living, there's really just two parts to it. You live and you die. And the dying is much more permanent than the living, obviously. And the difference between life and death, I mean, it couldn't be more stark, but at the same time, you can't have one without the other. And if we're lucky, we get 80, 90 years on this earth, and what we do with that is our choice. But who knows exactly, why we make some decisions that we make. I just so happen to feel like I used to think, and this is obviously not a sane thought, but I used to think that I was the reason that my mom died. And the reason for that was I would always just kind of feel like if I was just older, if I was bigger, that would have never happened. And I'm convinced of that to this day, but I don't know if that's the truth. But I do think that. And I felt responsible. If I would have just been bigger, if I'd have been older, if I would have been not just if I wasn't just like a helpless little kid. And obviously, there's nothing that I could do to change those circumstances. It was an irrational thought, and it was something that I had to deal with. And I did, for the most part, deal with that. But you make one mistake, big or small, no matter what, you're judged by the actions of your parents, your father. It's like a yellow stripe down your back. And it's not fair, but you can make one mistake and people say, well, you know who his dad is. Yeah. Must run in the family, that kind of stuff. And it doesn't run in the family. It does not run in the family. It never would. That kind of stuff isn't hereditary. Everybody has choices. And he did it, not me. My choice would have been to stop him. But we all have choices. Just because you're the son of a whatever doesn't make you that. Just because your father's a doctor doesn't mean that you're a doctor. You have to go to school for it. Just because your father's a killer doesn't make you a bad person. And it's good for you to know that, but does everybody else? I don't know. We're not responsible for the actions of our parents, but we are judged by them, right or wrong. My kids will be judged by my actions. You know who his father is, you know this, you know that. And I want them to be proud and not be embarrassed, not be embarrassed by me. Because, absolutely, I've always been ashamed. I walked in the house the other day and sitting right on the table was some mail for me. And the mail, literally, I picked it up and it says Department of Corrections. And immediately I knew who it was about, what it's about. They send me stuff all the time. I've been getting letters from the state and the Department of Corrections since I can't even remember. most of my mail is sent from a prison. California Department of Corrections. It happens. And it's never good news. It's never good news, it's always the same. It's always the same news. It's nothing good, it's nothing bad. It's just we'd like to inform you of this or that. And I have absolutely no relationship with my father, nor do I have any communication with him. When his mother, my grandma Diaz, died, um, she would send him all kinds of stuff. And obviously she loved her son, and so I always I really felt for her because she was just a really great woman, a really, really great woman. Just I miss her voice. She was just beautiful. Just a sassy, Mexican lady who didn't take any crap, but was so loving and loud and come sit down, mijo. Come on, just constantly like, and her life was just like cooked. Her life was just rough, man. And the way that people looked at her and judged her, and she would sit through birthday parties and baseball games, graduations, and people would look at her. And she told me that. She says, I'm sorry I didn't come to more things. I said, well, I remember you at most. She goes, I didn't want to be a distraction. And I know that they were always looking at me and judging me for the things that my son did. And I said, yeah. She says, if I was in town when this was going on, I could have stopped it. This was a year or so before she died. I could have stopped it. And I said, how? I could have talked to him. I said, I just don't see it that way. I never saw it that way. The same way that I said if I was older, I could have stopped it. Well, how? Obviously, I would have tried my best, but we may be judged by the actions of our family, but that doesn't mean that we have to live up to that either. I am not in any way, shape, or form advocating that it is a good thing to judge people by their parents. It's actually the opposite. It's the complete opposite. Hey, good to see you. It's you know what? It's really just commonplace now. It's really just commonplace. But I don't. But here's the thing. Back to what I was saying. I don't think that people that do true crime get into it for any other reason than they for, they have a fascination with it, and it can be profitable. And profit they do. And if you play it right, you can be very profitable. But that takes not caring about the story or the victims. The one of the things is that I understand people's draw to it. I basically sat the entire Kylie Rodney case out because I refused to entertain thoughts that were unfounded of a young girl. And I thought that the speculation was nuts and that it was far fetched. And you'd be surprised how many people drive into water. Happens all the time. And I knew that. Now, I didn't know what happened, but it made sense what would happen. Anybody that tells you that it didn't make sense, well, they're either really into big conspiracies, 9/11, Bigfoot, but that's not the issue. The issue is forums and people who pander to it that have no business or reason to talk about kind of stuff. You know, I'll never like one of the things that I hate the most is, and I'm going to say it here, uh, is Doug from No Thanks. I was perfectly fine with going my separate ways with him and not talking to him anymore and so on and so forth. But I got to be honest with you that I've never seen a bigger fraud in my entire life. I've never seen a bigger liar in my entire life. And somebody who misrepresents the facts and who has absolutely no business whatsoever covering true crime. And the only reason that it's done is because he makes a living from it. And it's easier than, I don't know, what he's qualified to do, which is probably just dig ditches. And the reason I know that he doesn't care about these cases or people in general is because I know him and I know that the things that he has said to me and others, specifically my mom, and he says these things out of anger and probably because he's just a flat out psychopath, but um, there's nothing that draws him to this. He says things that are just lies, and then he turns them around and, you know, lies and lies and lies. But he doesn't care about victims, abuse, you know? And I know that for a fact. Now, you can talk about, you know, Blowhorn Betty or, whoever else. Um, it's hard for me to take people serious that are rallying against domestic violence, that have been charged with domestic violence, and and I'm not judging them off of their parents. I'm judging them off of their own actions. That's why I'm judging them. And maybe I shouldn't. And I probably shouldn't even care. And for the most part, I really don't. It's just you're not pulling the wool over my eyes. I don't know how more people don't see it. But there are very few genuine people that talk about true crime. Very few. It's almost become a circus, but it brings people in. It draws a crowd. It draws a crowd. When I first got into broadcasting, podcasting, and all that kind of stuff, it didn't have anything to do with true crime, even though I have always followed specific cases and been a part of um, victim witness, and you know, let's see. I watched a bit behind the screen. Just don't say anything, any F's or nothing. Yeah, I agree. But that's why I struggle with maintaining in this weird forum, in this genre, because you get lumped in with the disingenuous, and called a tragedy pimp, and things like that. I know that I'm none of those things. However, I was forced into a club at a very early age that I didn't want to be a part of, and that kids join every day. and I'm still kind of I kind of feel like I'm Peter Pan, and um, every time I see this scenario happen, I instantly gravitate towards what the child's going through. Um, but it's not like it's not heart. It is heartbreaking, but it's not something that I can't deal with. Meaning, I would get no greater joy than talking to kids like that, victims of domestic violence, where their parents, and typically it's 9 times out of 10, it's father killing the mother. But I get a sense of telling children that have a long road ahead of them that life is worth living. It's just a little bit harder, and nothing's nothing's it's not that it's not temporary, or things aren't temporary. Excuse me, things are temporary. Feelings are temporary. Situations are temporary. Things are temporary. And that death is just as much a part of life, just and to respect that. It's not that hard to do. Um, you know, it's really not. It's not that much to ask, and trust me, I understand why there is a stigma and why people are called tragedy pimps and why people are saying that people um, manipulate situations. But look, that's been going on forever. It's not new. I mean, the tabloids have been around, the gossip columns, all that stuff has been around. It's just, it's easier to do now. Um, these unnamed sources and, you know, the TMZs of the world. TMZ, for being what they are, receives a lot of criticism, yet they're some of the most accurate reporting around, almost to a brutal fault. And like I said, they dictate the the true crime genre. They dictate who gets the attention. And it's based on the sexiness of the case. Nobody cares, it's like Patrice O'Neill said, right? We'll try it in here. Without Googling, who was Joran Vandersloot's victim? Who was he accused of killing. And I'll wait. Without Google, please don't. No Googling. Joran Vandersloot was accused of killing Natalie Holloway, but it was never proven. Although he was arrested for it twice, he was released. That's right. It was Natalie Holloway. Now, without Googling it, who was he convicted of killing? It's a Peruvian girl. I don't remember her name either. But who gets to choose and decide that? It's about the sexiness of the story. Unfortunately, and you could say, well, sexy's a weird way to put it. Well, it's not really. It's not really, because it's what you can get people to tune into. Natalie Holloway was a is a tragic, tragic story with no resolution. Joran Vandersloot went on to kill another woman and be convicted of it. And 99.9% of us don't know her name because it was a quote unquote standard killing. Plus, it was just wasn't big news. And should have been. Should have been big news. Wasn't. But that's like the Princess Diana thing. I mean, the conspiracies are endless there. Absolutely endless. And it was probably because of paparazzi and things like that. The reason that she died, the same people that probably made her driver crash probably wrote articles about it. It was vultures. People are vultures, and all you can really do is hope and respect the ones that aren't. Aussie. I just remember she was Peruvian. Yep. You're not alone. She certainly was Peruvian. She certainly was Peruvian. Yeah. Make it make sense as there's so many cases that don't get attention they need and deserve um, because everyone wants to chase the ones that they can sensationalize. Yeah, it's the mainstream. I do it too. I talk about the ones that people are in the know about. It's really hard to just go on and talk about cases from scratch that a lot of information isn't out there, and you know even though that we try to, um, it's not always it's not always that easy, and it's hard to get information out of just local news and so on and so forth. Yes, they do. Let's see. Joran Vandersloot. How old is he now? Wow, he's only 35. He looks like crap. Yeah, really does. Let me see what her name was. It's funny because you Google them and her name doesn't just come up right away. Stephanie Flores Ramirez in Lima, Peru. Stephanie Flores. It's the same thing with Amanda Cox or Amanda Cox, Amanda Knox. Everybody knows who Amanda Knox is, but who was her victim? Her name was Meredith Kircher. Well, you know, some people don't believe she had anything to do with it, but the story became about Amanda, not Meredith, even though it should have. And I fully believe that Amanda Knox had a part in that in one way, shape, or another. I don't exactly know what it is, but yeah, I think she absolutely did. Anyway, this kind of turned into a radio show. Sometimes I start talking, I can't stop, but I do appreciate you guys being here. Um, Maybe when I can't sleep, we'll do this more often. Over here, hiding away in our little oasis. There's another girl named Athena missing in Oklahoma. Wow. Yes, he is. God. Of course there is. That's terrible. Yep, there is tragedy every day. Tap, tap. You're right about that. Yeah. Yeah, it was, standard. Standard. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you guys. Yeah, I do too. Thank you guys for being here.